So it works good, and so it's a situation that, if there's anything we can do to help you encourage to do this type of thing. I'm not sure I helped your show.
Pay me.
Right?
Just pay me.
Right.
That'd be great.
I'm not sure I helped you with this podcast by being on it, but
I want to thank anybody who's made it this far in the podcast.
It's
I mean, we're over an hour and they're still listening.
Right.
Amen to them. They love band.
That's right. They must.
All right.
All right.
Well, welcome back, everybody, to the Growing Band Director podcast. This is episode number 62 with my man, one of my good friends, Jeff Priest. How you doing? Old Town High School. Yep.
Very good.
I want to thank everybody for following the show and doing what you do for kids and, all the stuff we deal with all the time. I just thank you, thank me, I'm a band director, thank all of us for dealing with everything we have to deal with and all that. And you've sort of lived like all the things, right?
That's right.
When did you start teaching?
Well, my first year was in Mattanock Academy, or at Mattanock Academy, I should say, in the fall of 1985.
Mm-hmm.
And I did 4 years there, and then David Socia, who taught at Leonard Middle School, recruited me to apply for the Old Town High School job. So, and I've been here since the fall of 1989. So,
And you've had a lot of great bands.
well, thank you.
Yeah.
We've been very lucky, very fortunate. I saw on your previous podcast Terry White saying he's the luckiest man in the world. Well, I think I may be luckier than Terry White because this is a great situation. It was the right time and the right place to do what we did. I came with the freshmen. This was a 10 through 12 high school, and I came with the freshmen. So I had two classes, not only the sophomore class but the freshman class. Mm-hmm. So the band went from 25 kids to 65 kids, and everybody thought it was me that did that. But when you broke it down and thought about it logically, it was that I got two classes mm-hmm. of kids. So they went from very unsuccessful to very successful overnight, and so a lot of people gave me a lot of credit for that. Very supportive superintendent, John Grady at the time, and he thought it was great and supported the program. And so we've done amazing things and traveled to great places in Florida, California, New York, Boston, mm-hmm. Washington. We've done everything that I really wanted to do with the kids to provide opportunities in music, and it was so great for us to have this, to do those types of things here because a lot of our kids are isolated. Mm-hmm. And so, I remember the first time we flew to Florida for a festival. It was the first time kids had ever been on a plane. Mm-hmm. And then to go to California was like going to the end of the earth, So we all every other year we went to Florida with the groups one year, and then we would go to a more local type of thing the next year, and then we went to Florida so many times the kids were actually getting tired of going to Florida, so we added California. Mm-hmm. So I think I've done 6 or 7 California trips.
I'm not sure if that's going to make it on the podcast, but that's a school bell.
Yeah.
We're doing this during the school day. Yeah.
So I did 6 or 7 California trips with the kids, and then probably a dozen Florida trips. So we've done a lot of fun stuff, and it's been a really great thing.
So what's the population of this town?
Probably about 6,700.
Yeah.
And I think it's been 20 years since the mill is closed. Mm-hmm. We used to have a school population. We were going over 800, which this place was pretty full for 800.
Sure.
And now we're about 530.
Yeah.
A lot of factors came into play, and we're actually getting smaller, as most towns, south of Augusta, north of Augusta are getting smaller, and so all the festivals we go to, they see where we're from and can't believe that there's anything going on way up north. Mm-hmm. So we're kind of the new Northern Maine in many, many ways because of the things that have happened. So.
And you've always seemed to have a high percentage of kids in band for having a small school.
Yeah, because any program that has a great success at the high school always has a great feeder program.
Amen.
And and feeder isn't the right word because they're
Their own program that
our-
also feeds your program.
our middle school program is all stands alone all by itself. You know, it doesn't need. They're not training students to go to Old Town High School. They're training students to be terrific at the middle level, and so we've had tons of advantages with that. We start kids in fourth grade, and we feel that that's the right thing to do for our community because we get to them before a lot of other people get to them, and so their music routine is in place by the time other opportunities arise for them. And we send the message that all our students can do everything, athletics, music, academics, and we encourage them all the way through, right through high school to do athletics. And a lot, and there are conflicts in some schools, we just don't have the conflicts. If I set music dates and they conflict with athletic events, I cancel my music dates and we'll find another date. Oftentimes, the athletic events can't be rescheduled, but the music can. And we work closely with our administrative team so that they can find the 3 conflict-free dates, you know, so that the kids can do everything because we're at the point now where we have very few students and all the great kids do everything.
Right.
So, and we have a situation at our elementary school where we start fourth graders, and if some of the classroom teachers see a student that's not playing a band instrument, they want to know why. So we've developed a culture that everybody plays in band, and that doesn't all, you know, we're not getting everybody, but we're getting a lot of students, and any student that can't afford an instrument, I'm kind of a used instrument collector. So I'll get requests from the elementary school, you know, that I need 3 clarinets, 4 flutes, and 2 trombones, and can you do it? I said, yes, I can, because I've been collecting them over the years and repairing them and storing them away, and so everybody that wants to play can, and I think that has changed, you know, the way we do business, you know, over the last 30 years, and so being here in this community for 34 years is you know, is an advantage because I know how everything works and
Sure.
I know who to talk to and who not to talk to. And
Yeah.
so, and we've been very fortunate. So,
Well, 2 things come to mind when I hang out with you around kids. One is there's going to be a lot of laughing because you never seem to take yourself too seriously.
I do not.
That's right. Something I need to learn. And also, the bands always sound great. So you've done honor bands everywhere. Your bands sound great. You're just somebody that, Jeff, would you do the band? Great. And then you can just leave and come back in a while, and the band's going to sound great.
Well, thank you.
Full sound, good ensemble playing,
Yep.
all the things. So I know a lot of what we wanted to talk about was just all these tips that you've come up with over your years of teaching that you would consider them all very simple,
I do.
right?
Yep.
Things that will help other teachers try some of these things and help their groups.
Yep. And I would say most everything that I'm doing, I've stolen from somebody else. And I think Terry mentioned this, and many of your other guests have mentioned this, is that networking is essential. I mean, because we're so multitasking all the time, and there's so many irons in the fire, or you want a ton of irons in the fire because you want to be dealing with all these issues. And so, so everything when I first came to Old Town, one of the big programs in the area was Nokomis High School with Stan Buchanan, and so I just essentially copied everything he was doing. And you know how you fake it till you can make it. And so I was chasing my tail for a long time with that, but it was just a matter of figuring those things out and then adding your personality to things, and we had a lot of fun. I think I probably 30 years ago I was much more serious than I am now, but I found that children have changed, programs have changed. I would have played for Tuscanini. You would have played for Tuscanini, but these kids aren't going to.
Yeah.
They want to play for someone that they like, and that's a whole factor that we have to add into the millions of other things that we have to do, is that we have to be personable with them, and we have to entertain them, but yet they've got to know there's a line. And I always say that, because I've gone to the Midwest, I think 16 times, that we can hold kids to a higher standard. And it's just, but you've got to have the techniques to do that, and the kindness to do that, and the funness, if that's such a word, to
Yeah.
do that type of thing. And I think that's what I've done. The big thing for me is instrumentation.
We're not starting this rehearsal until there are 7 tuba players.
Right, because 7 tuba players spell Old Town.
Right,
So
right.
that would be from the marching band. And I would be a big marching band guy if the marching band world was around me.
Right.
But it's not, so
Yeah.
it makes it very difficult for it to do that. But so we did a lot of street marching. I did 3 cherry blossom parades. We did the 1997 inaugural parade, President Clinton's parade. So we've done some big events. We were the main or the band that was chosen to do the Woonsocket, Rhode Island parade, and so we've done a lot of big events like that, and so that's been fun to do with the kids. But instrumentation is so important, especially low brass. And low brass can be challenging, I guess, for some people. I mean, me being a euphonium player, you know, we always have lots of euphoniums. We always have lots of tubas, trombones. You know, I played a lot of jazz bands, so I'm a trombone player also, French horns. And we've done a good job of, because again, our middle school stands on its own, so they're well instrumentated. So I'm getting students from there. If I'm not getting enough, then we go to whatever recruiting techniques we can to, and we never start one person on one instrument. We always start them in pairs.
Yep.
French horn players find a friend. You know, euphonium, find a friend, and then we switch them together, and then and then they use their free time to come in and learn those instruments. And again, after you've learned one instrument fairly well, the second one is much quicker.
Is it true that you let your tuba players go to lunch before everybody else when you rehearse before lunch?
Well, we don't do that anymore, but tuba players clearly get advantages. So I just remember holding up a tuba and saying, we need somebody to play this, you know, and 5 hands went up because, you know, they know that there's benefits
Yeah.
that go with being a tuba player at Old Town High School. So
Yeah.
it is a fun culture thing, and, you know, and the trumpets are really upset, and the alto saxophones are enormously upset with that, but
Yeah.
those are instruments that seem to be more popular at the 4th, 5th grade level. And again, we start beginners in 4th grade, but we also start them in 5th grade, so if we miss out on some students. So by the time they get to the Leonard Middle School, there's a large number of students, and we do an extensive mentoring program with the 8th graders for our 6th graders
Yeah.
to get them up to speed, and so there's a lot of things that we do that really work well for us.
And I assume when they start the kids there, do you go heavy on the trombone over the trumpet numbers? Like, do you take more of the lower instruments because they are going to easily turn into these other instruments as well? Or is that a kind of a crapshoot?
We certainly try. We're more interested in a lot of trumpet players because they can become tuba players and French horn players. We're in this area. We're famous for our trumpet players playing trumpet in jazz band and playing French horn in concert band.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's not a great double because you're a trumpet player. You know that it's that 2/3, 1/3 thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it works for us. Some of our best horn players played trumpet and jazz band.
Yeah.
So,
And it's not that dissimilar. I mean, you do have to make a change, but
right, but
It's like a cousin,
It's
you know?
taboo in some places, you know what I mean. But we do that because it's essential that we have horn players.
right. And if you're too low on trumpet numbers, then your jazz program isn't going to have enough trumpet players.
Right. And one of the things that helped our concert band instrumentation was that multiple jazz groups. And what I mean by that is we always have 2 jazz ensembles or 2 jazz bands at the high school level. And we can convince, and we have that at Leonard Middle School level, and we can convince mom. So when you go to a trumpet player and say, hey, how would you like to play French horn in concert band? But you have to give up your trumpet. You know, mom and dad's attitude is that we just got done paying for this trumpet. What are you talking about? You know, but no, he said, oh, no. They're going to play the trumpet and jazz band, but they're going to give them a nice double horn, shiny and nice and new, because we keep everything, you know, so we're handing them something nice as opposed to something that smells and looks bad.
Right.
And they're going to just play this instrument and they're going to get this one for free. Oh, that's great, they said.
Yeah.
You know, so that really, and we do that with euphoniums and tubas and all that type of thing. So we have a lot. I've had a ton of kids that play trumpet in jazz band and tuba in concert band, and they can do that. you know, and that really helps our low brass. I mean, and we have great low brass players, and then we have original low brass players that you start in 4th, 5th grade, but a lot of them have been switched. I remember one year I switched so many flute players to low brass instruments that I had a flute shortage. So I asked the low brass section how many played flute, you know, and almost all the hands went up. So,
Yeah.
but we're willing to do that at all levels. Sometimes I don't have to do that because I'm sent proper instrumentation, but if I don't have it, I will fix it. And a lot of people will say, well, it's too late. It's not too late. They can learn that second instrument quite quickly. And so it works out for us. And instrumentation is, if it's not our number one concern, it's 1A in terms of that, because we can sound very, very good on anything if you have the right instrumentation. You don't have the right instrumentation. And we do the pyramid of sound. We work on that constantly. You know, the low brass in the back is da on short notes, and the woodwinds are dit, and the trumpets. And we do all that type of stuff, which makes huge differences once the, you know.
So for anybody who hasn't heard about that, can we delve into that a little bit more?
Sure. One of the things that we do a lot with our low brass is that if a rest is following a note, for the low brass, that's a longer note, unless it's indicated, you know, otherwise. But if it has no articulation marking on it, that's going to be a longer note for them, so that you do get that pyramid of sound, where the upper woodwinds and upper brass will play short, so that it just fixes the tonality of the short note.
And the people in the middle play it
Yeah, the
the
people
way it's written?
Yeah, I mean, most of the time I've had them play short, you know,
Okay.
And that seems to work best. And last notes of pieces, the same type of thing if they're a short note, just so that you have that chordal stuff going on. It makes a huge
You
difference.
do the same thing when you have a sustained note, right?
Right.
When you cut them off, you'll say, if you're in the middle, cut off right with me. If
Yep.
you're in a
Yep.
lower, cut off a
We
little
do
bit afterwards.
The visual thing, we do flutes, middle, tuba.
Yeah, so
Tuba.
for people who aren't watching it, you put
Yep.
your hand up, and as
Yep.
you close your hand from the pinky in,
Yep.
so when you close your pinky, the flutes stop and clarinet stop, and then
Right.
as they get to the first finger, and
Exactly.
then when the thumb comes out,
Yep.
that's when you hands all together. Then
The
the
last
tuba.
thing you hear is tuba.
Right,
Tuba,
right.
you know.
So you're actually cutting off early if you're a higher instrument.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And then you have to work that out, because some will go too early and things like that.
Yeah.
And, you know, but those are little tips to go to the next level on those types of things. You know, and
Can I bring up a memory about
sure,
this?
Sure.
I think it was 2010 when you were doing our honor band, somewhere in there, and you were doing Salvation is Created, the great piece that I'm sure everybody's heard. If you haven't heard it, you should check it out. There's also, I don't know, have you heard the arrangement by Michael Brown of Salvation is Created?
I have. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's wonderful. I mean, if you have the band to play the original, do the original.
Right.
But it takes this piece and puts it in a grade 2, even if your instrumentation is not great, and it sounds like the original deal. It's really cool. And the percussion all play the chime part, and it's easy to play and all that.
Yep.
Anyway, I'm going to plug that piece because I've done it a couple times. From grade 2 to grade 3, like, it's a great piece. Anyway, so you work the opening of that Salvation is Created, and the woodwinds, people who weren't playing could have just gone and had a coffee. I mean, they could have just taken forever if they wanted, because you kept, and I thought, because the opening of that, it's all low brass, correct?
Right.
Tubas are in, euphoniums are in, all trombones. Or horns are not in.
I don't think so. They're
Okay.
later. Yep.
We didn't plan this part, but
Yep.
so like the opening is just low brass. And it's one of these that unless you have like 2 or 3 to a part, it's at this level, it's hard to make it sound the symphonic sound you want, right? So ideally you have a large number of kids. And when they read it, I'm going to be honest, I was like, man, that's really good. Man, that sounded really good. Because I didn't have a trombone section of 10 or 12 that band had. I just wasn't used to hearing the bodies and the 5 tubas. And you're like, wow, this is amazing. And you railed on that thing for half an hour or so. And by the end, it was almost life-changing. It was so good. But so you took that high standards, but
Thanks.
it was just this moment of just low brass.
Yep.
And when you have those numbers, you can do that.
Right. Yep.
Great piece of music.
It is. And then there's a lot of things you can do. We have a lot of simple rules that we do. When slow music as a whole, I mean, we could do at least one one podcast on
Well,
slow
do
music.
you want to get into that stuff right now about slow
could,
music?
sure.
Let's do it. So what are some Jeff Priest rules for slow music?
The crescendoing half note. Unless the half note is at the end of the phrase with a fermata, you know what I mean? But how many of those? You know, extreme exceptions. The half note is always built in. So you're crescendoing the half note, wherever that half note might be, and it will make it enormously musical.
You used to say crescendo white notes.
Right. In
Same.
white, yep, same type of thing. But I think if you look through your slow music, there's a ton of half notes
Yeah.
that would take. Now, whole notes, there are more exceptions to that, but that would still apply. And the other thing is that if you want things to sound musical, when things crescendo, speed up a little bit. Now, I'm talking very subtle changes, and when things decrescendo, slow down. That's, those are fairly obvious things. But when
But a lot of people don't think about that.
when I
That's right.
judge, I rarely hear that. And the musical phrases are just, can change the whole type of thing. If you listen to classical music and you listen to a lot of people that crescendo, they're speeding up slightly. And that makes a whole different,
'Cause the music's building.
that ebb and flow.
Yeah.
You're either going somewhere or coming back from somewhere. We've heard that a million times.
Yeah.
But that's all very true. And so I use that rule all the time. I mean, I always say to the kids, don't just sit there, do something. Now,
The music's not boring. You're boring. That's your famous. You are so boring.
so
The music is amazing. You have to not be boring.
Right. Are you bored right now? Well, maybe you're a boring person. I don't know. I'm probably not. I mean, you have to be careful with that. But the point is that just don't sit there, do something, and then I'll dictate whether what we're doing is appropriate to the and then a lot of cadence points have to be watched, slowing down, certain different situations and, do certain different things. The eighth notes, oftentimes they're rushed. They need to be, you'll need to linger on them like they're heavy.
And
You're
people will
pushing.
talk in detail about that. But you just have to say, play the eighth notes a little slower.
Right.
Right.
Almost pretend you're pushing them up a hill as opposed to,
Imagery.
right.
Yeah.
That type of thing. And then the balance, of course, slow music. I mean, and one of the things we talked about before the podcast was that how do we develop the bottom of the band? And this is really relevant in slow pieces because it's, it's important in all the pieces, but it seems to be exaggerated in slow music. One of the things I do with the trumpets, clarinets, trombones, alto saxophones, French horn, and flutes, depending, because those are all first, second, and thirds, or first and second, is that I give all the parts to everybody. So for instance, like the first clarinet player will have first, second, and third in their folder.
I never knew that about you, really.
Yep.
Keep going.
And so what I'll do is that I want to rehearse the third clarinet part. That's the sound we need. I mean, third needs to be louder than second, second needs to be louder than first. Okay, so what we'll do is I'll rehearse the third clarinets and so if
The
I
whole
have
section plays
the
it.
whole section plays third clarinet. And then I'll put it in the band with everybody playing third clarinet. And it becomes, have you ever heard that before, kids? No, I've never heard that. And that's what we need. So, and we'll do that several times, and then I'll have the seconds play second, but the first still playing third, and then, so we build it from that
That
way.
is brilliant.
And then the third clarinets, what they'll do is they gain this confidence because oftentimes our parts are separated by inexperienced players, more inexperienced on second, the most experienced players on first. And so what that does is it makes the band top heavy
Right.
instantly.
Yeah.
And so we're just trying to reverse that effect. And then sometimes there's times where I think I want two of the first to play second and one, that type of thing, and only one first. And the kids seem really receptive to that because they've almost gone to a helping mode. They're almost mentoring now. They're helping the thirds. And I said, it's awesome that you help the thirds right in this section because it's not thirds that you're not doing poorly. It's just that it's something we need to hear more of. We just need more of it. More oregano is always better. But if you get too much, it spoils the sauce. So,
Yeah.
And I do that with all the trumpets. It works great with the trumpets because lots of times the trumpets are playing the right fingerings but the wrong partials. And same with the trombones. So we rehearse all that way. And it gives for me, it gives the ensemble this another level of understanding of what's going on in the group as opposed to what they're playing. And then we constantly tell them all the time, why are you just listening? You're just listening to yourself. Could you try to hear somebody else and then tell me after I get done doing this section who you actually heard? And it really works. The listening from across the band and from, we always want to listen back supposedly, but listen back to what? So we play those sections so that they can hear the tonality of it. And lots of times they're in solo situations, but lots of times they're not. We've had several pieces where the third clarinet was a totally independent part.
Right.
So it needed to be supported with other players. So every situation we come on to could be treated differently depending on the orchestration of the piece. So,
Yeah.
and it really works. I mean, I've done this with my band. I haven't done it so much in festivals because a lot of the kids are assigned a part and they're strong. Perhaps they're more experienced players and they're a little stronger sound-wise, so you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
That's the difference. Why does the district band sound so much better than my band, or those types of things? And it oftentimes is technical ability, but oftentimes it's just their tonality and their sound. So
Well, so many of us have the ideal of saying, okay, my first trumpet player is going to play first, my second trumpet player is going to play second, and then third, then the fourth player is going to play first, and the fifth player is going to play second. But so often the demands of the parts
Doesn't
makes
work.
that's much harder to do.
right. So we used to, because that's what people told me to do. I tried it, and I said, "This is junk. This doesn't work at all," because the music we were playing was hard.
Now, if everybody can play, then
If
that's
every-
an ideal
Well,
world.
then if everybody can play, you don't need to do my system.
Yeah. Right.
So the third trumpet player can't play the first trumpet, but you're supposed to because that's the rotation that we're doing. But it doesn't work. So you just support the lower parts constantly. And again, if you have one tuba player, we know that tuba player has a friend.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of making that you got to go find a friend that you'd love to sit by and play tuba, and we'll teach them how to play tuba.
Right.
And they again take on the mentoring role of, way back we used to have little tags that said tuba in training. It was pretty fun because we made a big deal about it because
Yeah.
we always wanted tuba, and we've always been fortunate because I was a euphonium player to have lots of euphoniums. I mean,
Yeah.
a band that has 5 tubas and 5 euphoniums. I mean, you could
Forget about it.
you could play the phone book. What is it? You can sing the phone book. You're so, you got such a great voice. A band can play the phone book,
Yeah.
So, and then playing in tune and all these types of things, it just
It
helps.
all happens.
Yeah, it's,
That approach seems to also put the emphasis on the lower parts and makes those kids feel special.
Right, and
makes
they
them feel
oftentimes don't.
important.
Right.
Makes them, you're validating that they're very important. And sometimes in your music, if you do the score study, I was doing a piece recently and there's only 2 trumpet parts. The second trumpet part, you don't think much of it. G's and F's and A's and whatever right in the staff, but they're always playing the major 7th or the 9th of the chord.
Yep.
And you don't hear much because we're used to hearing those sounds, but you actually get in and you dig into it and you're like, these second trumpets, that G is really, here's another reason why the second part needs to be louder, because that's the color note.
Right.
And when you do that score study and you put the emphasis on them,
Right.
makes them feel.
And the most neglected part of all in the whole band for 100 years, second alto saxophone. Got all the great notes, and oftentimes you can't even hear it.
Right.
We can hear the first altos. That's fine. We've got you. You know what I mean? They're strong players, but it's the second alto. So we rehearse second alto all the time, because oftentimes they're the horn pitches. I know the alto one is also too, but oftentimes a lot of writers are just focusing on the second alto for those notes and that type of thing. So it's a sound that a lot of bands are missing out on. And I think hopefully, when I was rehearsing that district band, that's what you heard was the manipulation of that band to try to bring things out that wasn't there at the initial. And sometimes the orchestration is not your friend either. It's just you're never going to hear that part. So
And in my case, the room. Oof,
yeah,
my room is awful. How's your room?
it's not good, but we make it work. And
Yeah.
Our problem is a performing arts center. We don't have one, and the University of Maine has been kind of under. We go there for our concerts, and they've been under construction. So we've been doing our concerts in the gym, which is not good. But,
Yeah.
but hopefully that'll go away soon. So now the other thing I do with all these things that we've said, you got to play in tune, and every student has a tuner. Those I can't remember the name of them now.
The clip-on tuners.
Yeah,
Yeah.
clip-on tuners, and one of the advantages to that is that we're constantly checking unison notes, and we're trying to visualize tuning and putting common sense terms to tuning as opposed to this mystical thing that nobody really understands. And because they've got their own personal tuner, they're personally responsible now. They're not only responsible for their intonation, but the sound that they produce. And so once they have their tuner and they're using the tuner effectively, I can't believe how it changed the sound of the band. Now, we understand that when you're doing chords and those type of things, that the tuners are not as helpful. But there's a lot of unison lines that you rehearse the tuners can really help.
Yeah, so when you play the third, you're supposed to lower it how many cents?
Right.
Like 17, 20.
yeah,
What is
yeah,
it? I don't know.
yeah.
Some.
Yeah.
Until it's in tune. And then the fifth is supposed to go up a small amount as
Right,
well.
right.
If every kid is within 10 cents all the time,
Right.
okay, they've done their job.
We're very close.
Right.
And one of the great things about there's certain instruments like alto saxophone, all the saxophones. I mean, they can change the note very easily with a firmer or looser embouchure. So now when I ask the kids, you're high A altos, what are you? I'm flat, usually on that note. I'm sharp, usually on that note. And it takes a little bit, there's a learning curve to it. It takes a little bit. They want to change their mouthpiece on every note. I said, well, that's not going to
Yeah.
work. We go back to our tuning note, and then we play the A, and then we analyze where we're at. So when we come to that section, they can make those adjustments, because oftentimes their ears are not developed enough to notice. They may notice something's wrong, and
Right.
that's a great step once they notice something's wrong.
Right.
And then they can make adjustments, but oftentimes they don't know that it's wrong.
Do you work with mouthpieces only on saxophone?
Right. Trumpets,
On saxophone, I'm wondering.
yeah, on saxophone, yep.
'Cause I don't as much as I should, but
Right.
I'm going to go on my soapbox for a second.
Yeah, we do a lot of mouthpiece
Okay.
upgrades, and a lot of the kids can't afford them because saxophone.
No, I mean on playing pitches
Oh.
on the mouthpiece, on the saxophone mouthpiece. I don't know if you guys do that or not.
yeah.
But,
We do that in private lessons and
but
small
like,
section things.
Bar-
Yep.
I might be mistaking, but I think Barry sax is an E flat, a tenor sax is a G,
Mm-hmm.
and an alto sax is an A concert pitch, and that almost no kid will match that right away.
Right.
But if you can get your sections matching that tone as loud as possible, so they have to open up way more, say ah, and get the correct embouchure so they don't pinch as much. Then you put the horn together, and they're way more in tune and they're way louder.
Right.
I mean, I would say 98% of all saxophone players in America play sharp.
Right.
And you do that, and they're going to get a note way higher than they're supposed to.
Yep.
And then once they can do it, then you can move down a half step and have them practice matching
Exactly.
that pitch, and then they can tune until as long as
Right.
the day is. I mean,
Yep.
it's a great opportunity. So if people don't do that, they should. I don't do it as much as I should, but it's a technique I've
Yep.
used.
And we do that a lot with the tuners because they can visually see that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the altos clip it right up, so they're looking right into it. You know,
They also make attachments to the normal tuners. They're a little more expensive, but you can put the tuner on your stand, and then there's a wire that comes and clips
Yeah.
onto your microphone.
we did those at first.
Yep.
But the wiring failed us a lot. You know, where it hitches onto the. So we went with the clip-ons, and we've had less trouble with these. And then this company that is it, I can't remember. It begins with S.
The Snark tuner?
Yeah, the Snark Tuner company is, and I've been in communication with them. They've upgraded their tuners so that they used to do the 3-tab, and the ball fits into the 3-tab. Well, once the tab breaks, the tuner's no good.
Right.
So I've talked with them, and they actually redesigned and put it into a sleeve. The ball goes into a sleeve so that, and I'm not saying that I.
All because of you.
I'm not saying that, but they realized maybe the other 3,000 phone calls they were getting.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
we got to do something. So now the new tuners that we're getting are much more industrial strength. So,
Yep.
so that really, and I think the tuning has helped us a lot, especially during COVID. A lot of kids weren't playing. You know, so when we came back, it was, you know,
One thing I've gotten back to a lot is the F drone. And you could just, if you have your computer plugged into whatever you have for a thing, just go on YouTube and go F drone and it lasts for 20 minutes or whatever.
Yep.
The other day, I put it on, it looks exactly the same, but it's the F sharp drone. I'm not lying. It was like the world was spinning. I had the band play and turn it up all at once. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I stopped and I heard the drone was an F sharp instead of an F. And it was like, it was kind of rough. It was a Mr. Smith moment. But
and we do a lot of things with sound with the kids, trumpets, all our trumpets. I think all trumpet players started on 7C.
okay.
Or something equivalent to that. And so by the time they're in 7th grade, definitely by freshman year, we've changed them to 5C. Because we believe that their lips must be bigger now. Their arms are longer, their legs are longer, they're taller, you know.
The muscles are stronger. Yeah.
So all our trumpet players, unless they have a specific, you know, teacher and that type of thing, are all on 5C. Trombones are all on 7Cs. And that makes a big difference in the sound, you know, for them, and opens everything up. And so it's, you know, and so that's changed a lot. And then again, we mess with, you know, as much saxophone mouthpieces and different brands and different kinds and those types of things. So that makes
Great.
a big difference. And the other thing that we do that helps with sound is all our students get free reeds.
Yeah.
And so I buy the reeds, you know, the top quality reeds. And the only thing that they have to do, if they accept my free reeds, which they all do, they have to have a 4 reed holder and they have to rotate them.
You label them 1, 2, 3, 4.
Right.
Yep.
And we have a labeling day and we have a reed day and we do that. And many of them will do that. I've had a few that I catch that don't, but I search cases and
You know, it's a way you can do it. I've done it in the past. Monday is 1 for everybody. Tuesday's 2, Wednesday's 3, Friday's 4, Thursday's 4, and then Friday you get to pick whichever one you want. And obviously on concert day, pick your best one.
sure. And then, and that's a good way to do it. But what happens, I've almost lost my thought there, but because we're doing the reeds, those 4 reeds will last a substantially long
Yep.
time.
Yep.
So the initial cost is a lot, but once you get into it, it's very cost
I don't know if you do
effective.
this. I was taught when they take the reed, they lay it flat on a piece of paper, which acts as sandpaper, and then they kind of move it in circles to kind of sand it down a little flatter before they begin
Yep.
to use it.
I think many of them do that, and I
Yeah.
don't see it, but yeah, we should probably try to control that. you know,
I mean,
maybe.
I assume it works. I've been told by good
Yeah.
people. So it's great. Talked a lot about concert band. How about conductors? Let's talk about conductors.
Conductors.
Yeah, we're both good conductors. We show the music.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mike-
Our ears are working well as we're conducting. We're hearing things. We're showing things.
I used to be a really good conductor. Now that may be an exaggeration there too, but what we all do is what everybody knows we do. We get too big,
Yep.
you know, and it's because you're trying so hard for them to do so well that you think if a little is good, maybe a lot's better, you know, and it's just not.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to rein it in. You've got to
More wrist,
more
more
wrist,
fingertip.
and you've got to come with some kind of almost like a pitching. You know, you see when you watch baseball games, the pitching square
Yep.
for the pitchers. You almost have got to establish yourself with one of those, and you can come out of it every once in a while, you know. But for the most part, it should be right within that
Yep.
space in front of you, and the work that you do. Once you rein it in, they're going to have to watch you.
Yeah, and they reflect what you're showing. So if you see one of these directors, and we've both done it, so I'm not saying we don't do it, who's like over conducting at the moment, and it looks like really hard, like they're struggling, almost like, wow, how do you do that? That's really hard.
Right.
And then you hear the music, like it kind of sounds the same way.
Right.
And the minute you either stop conducting or you conduct differently, the music just changes. It's amazing how much, and actually quite humbling how much at times we're holding our students back by our conducting.
Right. I've always said there's bad conductors and great rehearsers, and then there's great conductors and poor rehearsers. There rarely is a great conductor and a great rehearser. Those you know, it's just the way it is, and I constantly have to remind myself to, and when things aren't going well, you know, if I was videotaping myself, it would, that's why, you know.
One of the things my wife does to help this. She's on the podium maybe 10% of the rehearsal. If you go, she is all over the place the entire time running the rehearsal, behind the band, in the percussion section, in the trumpet, wherever, and they're on her all the time. But so then and they can function totally without her. Like you say, the Cadillac is a Cadillac without the hood ornament, right?
Yep.
So then when she gets on the podium and shows something, it means so much more.
Right.
So I would urge people to get off the podium,
Right.
walk around.
Well, and then, boy, the mystery of what's going on back there.
There shouldn't be a mystery. Just walk back there.
Right, right.
Some people, Ken Clark always said, separate the band and put a row right down the middle so you can walk right back to the percussion
Yep,
section.
Yep. And he's a percussionist, so,
Yep.
yep. And so yeah, absolutely. So I think all conductors do they've got the skills. It's just a matter, and like you say, you've got to show them. But the big thing is that you have to show them something. You have to do something, because they're not going to watch you. If you're just going to 1, 2, ready, go, and and you got to mess with them constantly. And I do it musically. I mean, I probably will eventually, by the time the concert comes, I've done that section the same a few times. But I hate being do it the same way exactly all the time. Slow down, speed up. We do tons of drills with count with me, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and then I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and. We
Yep.
make them add the and.
Yep. You can make it a competition when you play an 8-bar chorale, and I bet you can't stay with me.
Right.
And they can when you make
Yep.
it a competition.
And we're doing like gear path dances, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We can count the whole piece just like that. Not their parts, but the meter changes and all. And boy, once they understand that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. It makes a big difference, and it's not something that a lot of people would do, but it really works well.
I have a variation on that I saw. Jean Quinn, just retired, one of my dear friends, great middle school teacher. She was doing our district honor band, and as a way to get them to do it, they were also doing the second movement of Lincolnshire Posy, the young band arrangement. So the Saturday warm-up was, I want you to play whole notes of the concert B-flat scale. But every measure, I'm going to change meter. It could be 2, it could be 1, it could be 4, it could be 5, it could be 6, it could be 3. And you only change notes when I get to count 1.
Right.
So she'd conduct 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. She wouldn't speed up or slow down, and they couldn't, so that forced them to watch her. She was giving them information that they needed. Talk about a brilliant teaching moment, because not only are you making them watch you, but you're practicing a skill that you need in the piece that you're doing.
Right, and she's made it simple enough so they're doing concert B flat.
Right.
So that the only thing they're thinking about is, we do it all the time. The notes are easy. Why aren't you watching me? And we've gotten to the point, is a learning curve to everything, but this is 1. And if you don't line up, then you have to stop and realign yourself. Now, you hope that doesn't come to the case in a concert, but in rehearsals, and doing slow music, people are very frustrated, but a lot of the students just don't understand that this is 1, and count with them and subdivide, and subdivision is a tough thing for them to do, but if you practice it,
And now, since they went home for a year and a half or whatever, then they come back, that awareness was just gone.
Right.
The first band I had afterwards was like, we couldn't play Beat One together.
Right.
Because they were just so used to doing their own thing.
Right, exactly, yeah. How about sight reading? Let's
Yeah.
talk about that.
Yeah.
Sight reading. So why would anybody, or any musician, I should say, want to do sight reading when every time you do it, it makes you feel not smart? I mean, kids today like to do things that make them feel smart or make them feel good, however you want to package it. So I was saying to myself, boy, what am I going to do? Because we need to sight read, especially at the State Jazz Festival and all that type of thing. And so I said, I got to thinking about people that are great sight readers, because we're so involved in
You
jazz.
looked at me. You weren't referring to me, though, right?
No, but these bands, studio musicians,
Yeah.
they put anything in. They start their day having no idea what they're going to be handed, but that's their living, and they're not going to make money if they don't perform this piece at up.
Yep.
So what do they do? Well, oftentimes they already know, especially in jazz bands, they already know the song. If you're sight reading Satin Doll, you know how it goes. Now, there might be some interesting different twists and turns that your arranger did, but for the most part, you've got the fundamental skills. So I'm thinking like, what is it that my kids don't know? They don't know the songs, okay? And with concert band, they just don't know the rhythms. So what I do is I sight read with the kids. I play the recording first. And they're sitting there intently watching, paying attention, and then we play the piece. And they go, I said, kids, that was great. You did a great job with that. You know, now the purist would be saying, well, Jeff, that's not sight reading if you played the recording for them. And they're right. So the next...
But they don't have the background knowledge to like even...
Right. So it's almost an unfair thing you're doing to them.
Yeah.
Now, I understand you can sight read grade 1, that type of thing. And my kids can do that in grade 2 probably. But then you're getting into grade 3, it's becoming very difficult for them. So I play the recordings. This is with jazz and concert band. We play the recordings. And then we do concert band, we do one a week. Jazz ensemble, you know, with the jazz groups, because I meet during the school day, we do every day. And then eventually oh, kids, I'm sorry, I don't have the recording to this one. And then they'll have to do that on their own. And I'll pick one that's a little easier. And then, so when I say we're going to sight read, because of all those techniques, which are very simple, I'm not saying that they're innovative, but because I prep them that way, they're very excited to sight read and want to and try harder. And then I'll throw them some harder stuff, and then they'll fail. I said, well, I bet that's good. Let's step back and do this. And so we sight read a ton, and the kids really love doing it. I mean, and if I don't do it for a few days because we get busy with trying to perfect the concert program stuff, things like that, they'll ask.
Yeah.
We haven't sight read. And I don't think we've ever gotten anything other than a 5 at the State Jazz Festival. And what we do, that 2 minutes for the people that are doing the State Jazz Festival, that 2 minutes that the kids look at the music, the lead alto player will count off and they will sing the 32 bars. Usually it's 32 bars. And then when I get my 2 minutes to talk to the kids, I can say, hey kids, in measure 14, you sang that rhythm wrong. Now I can't sing the rhythm for them, but they'll re-look at that rhythm.
Yeah.
Think about that and that type of thing. And Dr. Edelman did sight reading one year and stuff, and said that, you know, called me specifically, said that the method that I was using was, you know, very organized and very, because it can be a very chaotic time, time, you know, when everybody's trying to do that. But it worked. I mean, it works well for us, and that's what we do with that.
A couple things I've done with the sight reading side of things is, first of all, you can find tons of rhythm sheets on YouTube. On online. There's one from the Summit bands. I stole their stuff because it's out there, and it's these great rhythm drills.
Yeah, I'll have to.
And
Summit band?
Summit,
Okay.
yeah.
Yep.
I mean, you just put in like band sight reading drills or rhythm drills, and they're one of the ones that pop up. They're great. I mean, they're there so you can use them.
And they kind of listed rhythm 1, rhythm 2, rhythm 3.
Yeah, it's like page 1, and it goes from easy to hard and all that.
sure.
But to me, the simple part of having a fun backing track or a tune, the one I use right now is F because we do it on an F. We'll do like F minor fusion, right?
Yep.
And I'll find a backing track that they really like, and they have to move to the music, and they have to tap the beat, and so like they're playing a rhythm drill, but they're like on this cool club groove or whatever it is, or a rap groove or a fusion groove, or it doesn't matter as long as the tempo is something they can do. I'll have them count it through once without stopping, then we'll call sizzle count or whisper count with you tongue it, and then the third one is they play it. And sometimes we'll even improvise on it. Hey, pick a different note or change notes or whatever. You can work that in too. The other thing I've done before, a shout out for people who do March Fridays. I had a rehearsal every day. I don't anymore, but every 5 days, I had a book of just these like marching band marches. And so they're simplified versions of these great marches. And every Friday they knew we just took it out and we'd read a march. And some kids got really excited for March Fridays.
Sure.
Because they knew we were going to do that. And marches, not that they're easy to sight read, but it's 1, 2, 1, 2,
Right.
1, 2. You know, there isn't a lot of other stuff happening there.
Yep.
So you're right. Getting kids to sight read as part of your culture is really, really important.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, you know,
And their vocabulary. That's their vocabulary.
Right, and playing the recordings for them is almost like learning. It's like training wheels.
Yeah.
You know, what I mean, nobody ever really rode a bike without training wheels. So you just give them a taste of it, and they get great. You know, I remember when I did the training wheels. I mean, with my kids, they thought they were the greatest thing alive. You know, they're riding a bike, they're pedaling, but you're trying to reduce the number of multitasking things they have to do.
Yeah.
And then take the training wheels off, not playing the recordings, and
With the recording, sometimes you can have them play with the recording.
we'll do that.
And that's like, wow, we sound fantastic.
Yep.
Well, of course you do. You know, and you're right. It gets them into the spirit of it. Not a lot. Sometimes I'll take a vote.
because I think a lot of people will just pass out the sight reading piece and said, okay, here we go. Well, that wasn't very good. I mean, you just can't do that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you have to ease them into it and encourage them, and eventually they'll want to do it.
And also, wouldn't we be happy if all of our kids spent 5 minutes listening to anything we wanted every day?
Right.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
And that's
well,
a-
typically, the minute they walk in, they have about 5 minutes till they're, 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes. So have something on that you want them to hear of any style.
Right. We have we have the music that we're playing for our concert.
Yeah.
You know, and while they're kind of coming into the room. The other thing, the beginning of rehearsal, I'm very lucky. My rehearsal's at 8:30, so I encourage the kids and school starts at 8:30. I encourage the kids to get here at 8:10. To extend that. We already have 74-minute rehearsals, which are just great, but I try to get even more because do some warm-ups or some listening or that type of thing. So kids are starting to trickle into the room around 8:15 or so, and then I always want to start with a chorale or something to warm them up. Well, I just never had enough parts and pieces or the right parts and pieces to start early, and I always wanted to start early. You know what I mean? I thought that was just the early bird gets the worm, type of thing. So I said, let's do that. Well, it really wasn't working with the chorale because the chorale would sound so awful because you're missing all these pieces. So that wasn't a positive thing. So then we went to lip slurs and long tones with the woodwinds. And so everybody will start on a concert B flat, da, that type of thing, and then work down chromatically. And when we get to, F 1 and 3, and then E 1, 2, and 3, and then we can change the, we can go to concert F, and then. So that was cool, and the woodwinds are playing long tones chromatically and that type of thing. So then I said, well, let's do all the scales that are associated with that. So we start out with a concert B flat scale, going from high to low, and then we go concert A flat, concert G, concert F sharp, and then concert E,
F and then E, yeah.
and F and then E, and then go back to concert B flat tuning note. And then we'd go the other way. So da 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 da, and then finally da 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 da, and do it that way. So everybody knows that. That's part of their. If they ask me at any time for an assessment piece, that's what we would use, is that opening warm up thing. And I can do that with 5 people. 2 people if I had to. So it gives the kids 7 scales at least that they know. So one of our, I think you have to have some, I can't remember what they're called, benchmarks or something. Everybody that graduates from Old Town High School music
We'll know
department
7 scales.
will know 7 scale. And then we've added concert B flat,
Yeah.
chromatic scale. And then the kids wanted to know, they were thinking, so there's a chromatic scale for every, I said, no, there's only really one chromatic scale.
Yeah.
We just started on 3. So now we started on B flat, E flat, and F.
Yeah.
And eventually maybe next semester we'll change those
Yeah.
starting notes because it does change it for them mentally,
Yeah.
in terms of where they start the chromatic scale and end the chromatic scale. So we do a lot of, that's our warm up in the morning. And then if I want to go to a chorale at that point, I will. When finally the bell is rung, the morning announcements are over and everybody's in their seats.
Yeah.
So
That's cool.
and it's made a big difference with our brass players. Like you said, why do we do lip slurs
Yeah.
and that type of thing. And the other thing with the chromatic scales, everything is working. And we work a lot on the alternate fingerings and the alternate positions and
Yeah.
adding them. If someone, this is boring, okay, we'll add some alternate fingerings and alternate positions and that type of thing, and that develops some of those, alternate, like with trombone, D in 4th and B flats in 5th and things like that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So we should get into some of the stories, some of the funny, I don't know, some of the funny stuff I think about when we talk, because we've talked for years and years and years. And so one of the things, I just had them in my head. What was it? Oh yeah. So did you learn this from Skeff or Skeff learned this from you or whatever? But people haven't, when it changed my world when I heard this, because I was in the middle of doing all second band all the time in jazz band. Yeah. So on the shout chorus, right? Taking the lead trumpet part and writing it out in octaves for the entire brass section. So they're all playing the melody in octaves. And then you're not going to notice it because all the saxophones have all the harmony parts. that when you have a younger, less experienced band and you want to take a chart and make it sound more powerful at those times, that's a trick you can use. And I'm not sure if I think that's the right thing for the kids. I don't know if the composer wants that or not, but you're making this chart more accessible for them at that time.
Right, exactly.
Did I get that lineage right?
Yeah, I think that I think I listened to a podcast where Skeff actually took credit for that.
Yeah.
So, and he should, you know what I mean? Because he's much wiser,
Yeah.
in terms of, but I've been putting trumpets in octaves since, since the beginning of time.
Yeah.
And especially punches. Because those octave punches, I mean, it's from the old, Maynard Ferguson days. Everything was in octaves. And those big last moments or the last chords or that type of thing. And so those inner notes are so hard for the inexperienced kids to hear. So, and what's the perfect solo? What's the perfect, is the melody. So you've got to hear that melody note, and so we do that a lot. Now, depending on the ability of the trumpet section, I'll change that up. And like one of the charts we're doing right now, there's one section where I'm doing octaves, and the other section I'm doing what's written out. But again, you have to look and make sure that the tonality is covered in other groups. Trombones, they don't seem to have as many problems with that. For some reason, I don't know. I don't know if but you can do that with trombones. But again, oftentimes you're not dealing with a melody note, type of thing. So yeah, we do that a lot, and I've had great success. I mean, good quality judges say, "Wow, the trumpets just sound so powerful and so punchy," and the ba-doo ba-ba-doo ah. As opposed to ba-do-ba-da-ba-do. So it makes a big difference, and you can work doing the parts and getting the parts, and that's the other thing. Like I said, we'll all play fourth trumpet, in jazz ensemble. We'll play the shout course where all the trumpets are playing fourth trumpet, and it helps and supports the fourth trumpet. Then we'll do it with playing the third trumpet.
Yeah.
And then break off from there, but. In jazz ensembles, the same way, development of the brass section. I mean, me being a trombone player, I've spent decades of my life making trumpet sections sound great. So it's a matter of fitting those trombone parts in with the trumpets, and they overlap that drop down 2 and 4 thing. So you've got to overlap there somewhere of
The lower trumpets and the first trombones.
and you got to line those up with. It's really helped. Third trumpet is the same as second trombone.
Yeah.
And if you do that for them, it really helps them when they're trying to get those pitches.
Yeah.
And so we break everything down. I mean, and again, I'm the luckiest person in the world who has jazz ensemble and jazz band for 74 minutes every other day.
Yeah.
My brass players will have, so for instance, like a normal week, so we'll have band Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So my brass players will play on Monday. They'll have jazz ensemble or jazz band, the brass players, on Tuesday. So they're playing 5 74 minutes a week
Without practicing on their own.
without practicing on their own.
Yeah.
Yep. And oftentimes we tell the kids don't practice because it's leave your instrument here because we're doing a ton of work. So it's a situation that our brass players are always very, very strong.
Yeah.
And we're doing tons of lip slurs and all that type of stuff with them. So it's, I've had several college people come into my rehearsal and they'll hear the lip slurs. I said, who does lip slurs? You know what I mean? Usually
In a jazz band.
right.
Yeah.
That type of thing. We just, and with concert band in terms of like, before they get to college to learn all that type of stuff. But it's common now, but it wasn't so much, 20, 30 years ago. So those things work really well for us. And then because you've got the tonality covered in the saxophone section, you can do, And then speaking about jazz stuff, there's some basic things. I think I know 4 or 5 drum licks, and I can play. I've taught myself drum set. My biggest, I wished I'd learned how to play piano. Back in the day when moms used to make kids go to piano lessons, those days are gone. My mom's 85, and I still give her a hard time of why didn't you make me take piano lessons, because it would have been great to go over and show the piano player,
Yeah.
and I should have taken the time to do that 30 years ago.
It's not too late.
Well, it might be. But
Third and seventh in the left
yeah,
hand.
that's
yeah.
right. Yep. So, but the drum, is up, but up to do, ba, ba, everything that's on the and of whatever.
Yep.
And then clicks behind saxophone sections, and then developing the left hand comping.
Mm-hmm.
I call it left hand comping. I mean, all this stuff is on YouTube. You just have to, know what to type in and.
And if you can just, whether a band director, like their band is at a certain point, go and hear another band that you know is just better than your band.
Right.
Maybe not like the Gordon Goodwin band, but like hear a band that you think is better and then try to pinpoint, okay, what do they do that's better than us?
Right.
Oh my gosh, when they get to the solo sections, the soloist is playing and the rhythm section is on fire. They're going back and forth and comping and doing all this.
Yep.
We should do that.
Right.
I mean, that's teaching in a nutshell.
Right.
They do that. We should learn how to do that. How do I do that?
And I've heard you say in other podcasts, like the chart is here, and then the solo section.
Yeah.
And it's got to be a combo-like situation. Do you know what I mean? And if you got one thing out of this podcast, the development of the left-hand comping from the drum set player.
More important than the tuba stuff?
Well, maybe. I don't know. Maybe because the drummers can do it. A dang, chick, da dang, chick, da dang. They don't need to do that. They can dang, 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 dang. And they don't need to know what they're doing. Just do it. And then eventually, as they're faking that kind of thing, to make it later is to call and response with the soloist and that type
And
of
as they're learning to do it, if they're struggling, they can double the rhythm in their right hand on the ride cymbal.
Right.
I mean, it's not authentic,
Right.
but it helps them get through it, and you wouldn't really even notice.
Exactly, and because don't play the bass drum. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the big one. And then
But a lot of people say to feather the bass drum if you can do it.
you can, but very few. I've seen very few people do that. But you can do it. I mean, but that's an advanced technique to feather that.
Yeah.
Where a beginner really needs the boom, chick, boom, chick. So just take your foot off the bass and do it beside the bass drum
Right.
pedal. You know what I mean? And the other thing, is the dang, dang, a dang, dang, a dang, 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 da dang, dang.
Yep.
Alter that because that lightens everything up. Don't play 2 and 4.
It's more like straight quarter notes with
Right.
the occasional
Yeah.
dang-dangs.
And behind the piano solo, don't play 2 and 4.
Yeah.
Light, very light left hand comping.
So we're in the middle of Jazz Allstate now, and I kind of came here to hang with you. And so I'm managing, and John Mastriani from University of Connecticut is doing the band. Right before he left, he said this in a way I'd never heard it. He said to the rhythm section, when the band's playing a lot, you need to stay out of the way. I don't think he was talking about drums in that case, but guitar and piano. And then when they don't play as much, that's where you have to play more.
Right.
And I mean, that was like, he said it in such a simple way.
Right.
You've said some stuff in this podcast, and he said that. It reminds me of great coaches. What is teaching or coaching? You take a really complex thought, and then you put it the simplest way possible for someone who doesn't understand it to learn it.
Well, I always say to the kids, including myself, if it's too complicated, I can't understand it.
Yeah.
And I'm certainly not going to be able to help you, with the type of thing. And so the greatest live performance I ever saw in my life, well, it was 2 of them. It was the Gordon Goodwin Band in Manchester, in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'm so excited to hear this drummer. I can't remember the drummer's name, and I should, but he played with Voodoo Daddy, I think.
Yeah.
And
I know who you mean.
But anyway, long story short on this is that I was amazed that night of what he did not play. And you're so right about in a big band situation, when the band's playing a lot, the drummer is really got to be just throwing backbeat, especially in shout choruses, with some fills on the end of 1, 2, 3, batu, gang, tom, jing, cha,
Simple.
Right. And if the drummer's playing a lot, there's going to be tons of problems rhythmically from other people, and we do a ton of that, So that's a great thing. And most of the drummers, if they can play a swing beat, I have 2 really young drummers in jazz ensemble this year. But what's so great for me is that they'll do everything I tell them, and it's awesome because it's in the band can really swing with just some basic stuff. But we're doing a lot of the left hand stuff during solo sections and during vamp sections, especially need to be left hand kind of comping and not on the 2 and 4. So those type of things. So those are little things that, like when I do clinics and go to places, I just fix those instantly. You know what I
Right.
mean? And it's it's funny because I'm pretty simple with everything. Is that I'll go work with somebody's band and geez, the band sounded so much better when you got done. I said, what did you do? I said, I just worked on the sections that didn't sound good.
Right. Right.
I mean, but I think we need to step back a little bit. Sometimes we're so involved in the score and so overwhelmed with everything that's going on that we're really not listening. Boy, that doesn't sound good. And
Yeah.
Skeff is famous for rewriting it, because he has that ability. The only ability I have to rewrite things is put things in octaves and things like that. But there's a lot of things you can do, to alter things that will make a big difference.
That's great. Any parting words we want to leave them with, or are we cooked?
Well, I think one of the things that I binge listened to all your podcasts.
All of them.
Well, not all of them, but
I haven't listened to all of them.
I listened to a lot of marching band stuff that
Yeah?
that I didn't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great. So, but I think you need to be thanked for doing this. I mean,
Thank you.
It's something that's perhaps considered simple, but it takes the to tenacity to do it Do you do one every week? Is that what?
Yeah.
I mean, that's great because all this stuff we need to know, and even if it's like, well, Jeff Priest didn't say anything I needed to know because I've already heard it before. That's great. I mean,
I've been teaching a long time, and I've tried to have a lot of conversations over my whole career. I learned from today that whole, like, everybody gets the third part, everybody gets that. I mean, I didn't know that at all. I mean, and I'm not saying I know more than everybody else, but, like, I've heard a lot. So, I think the art of the conversation is just, and that's where I got the idea to do it in the way that Jeff and I've done the podcast, is just having the conversation. Because a lot of times you can just pick up stuff in a really easy way.
right. And so thanks so much for doing this because I
Sure.
think it. Do you get information on how many people have viewed your podcast and stuff?
Yeah.
So the numbers should be. We just got to get the word out. And I think I told a lot of people last week that, they'd never heard of it. That.
Yeah.
And the name is a cool name. So you put the growing band director in.
Right.
It
When you're
comes-
green, you're growing. When you're ripe, you rot.
Right.
That's from the
So
famous
it's-
McDonald's owner.
That's
So.
right. Yep. So it's really good that you do this. I really appreciate it, and I know other people do, and the fact that you get, I get my 10 minutes of fame.
That's right. I was going to say something I forgot.
So it works good, and so it's a situation that if there's anything we can do to help you encourage to do this type of thing, I'm not sure I helped your show.
Pay me.
Right.
Just pay me.
Right.
That'd be great.
I'm not sure I helped you with this podcast by being on it, but
I want to thank anybody who's made it this far in the podcast.
It's
I mean, we're over an hour and they're still listening.
Right.
Amen to them. They love band.
That's right. They must. Thanks so much.
Thanks,
I really
Jeff.
appreciate it.
All right. See you guys next time. We sincerely appreciate you taking your valuable time and listening to the Growing Band Director podcast. Your students are very lucky to have a band director like you. If you have any suggestions for episode topics or think you have an area of expertise to share on a show with us, please reach out. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your band director friends to subscribe as well. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening to The Growing Band Director. See you next week.